Cool. Sweet. Hey, folks. I'm Josh. Nice to meet y'all. Thanks for having me and coming out on a cold night. Um, I'm going to be talking about a project that I've been working on. But before I guess I get into that, I'll just kind of introduce it by saying it was like a day a couple of months ago. I think it was a very nice like Sunday fall morning when I was driving down the street in my own car in front of my house, and this dude kind of comes up behind me and starts tailgating me. He was going like really fast, trying to get around me. I was driving down the center of this nice bucolic simple road, but he wanted me to pick a lane from the available one lane. And I probably should have just like let him go past me in Zoom, but instead we just started like communicating through the mirror. And I was like holding my finger up, being like, no, it's one lane. And he was holding up two fingers. He was like, there's two. And we just were like doing that for a while. And then he kind of turned off onto some side road and zoomed away. Yeah, that day, a couple months ago, just sort of inspired me to like come back to a project that I'd put down, kind of picked up and put down over the past couple of years, which was my desperate desire to get an always stop sign installed on my corner right here in Ditmas Park, Brooklyn. Yeah, all right. Yeah, so I live here. Dox myself. I live here on Dorchester Road. It's just an odd little one-way, single-lane, east-west street. It's a very nice, little residential block, but the street has some features that make it really appealing for aggressive drivers. It doesn't have a lot of traffic controls. Most of the streets north and south are maybe a little more, a little higher traffic, and they have stop signs every block. It's also like a really wide street. It's just an attractive shortcut for folks trying to cross central Brooklyn. As I mentioned, it's extremely wide. It also has intersections that kind of create this like acute angle that makes visibility really challenging. So on the left side, you see this is just like the Apple Maps photo that I grabbed that shows kind of an example of what always happens here, where there's like north-south drivers kind of coming from left to right in this photo, just sort of nose out, into the intersection to like try to see if there's anybody speeding down in the other direction, looking to run them over before they kind of dart across the street. So like these two people who are trying not to get squished, there's no pedestrian crosswalk, there's no pedestrian infrastructure at all. It's not great and it's scary and I don't love it. So yeah, I'd like to fix it. This is just kind of I guess another view of the intersection, which will factor in a moment, but you can kind of see the geometry of it there. Yeah, you kind of see like this is sped up, so it's more dramatic maybe than it looks in real life. But this is sort of like an average afternoon or average like rush hour weekday kind of situation. Not super great. And I take this stuff very personally because I have lived within a mile of where I live right now for basically my entire life, aside from 4 years upstate in college and 7 years in the North Slope. This has sort of been home forever. So yeah, I would like it to work as a place to live. I'd like to be able to cross the street. So my partner and I moved into our apartment 2 years ago. One of the first things I did was head to the DOT's site to request my always stop. The second thing I did was buy like reflective gloves that I could keep in my coat pocket and just like try to, just something to not get killed. This is kind of cool. Anybody can do this. I don't know. I'm curious if anybody here has like gone through this process at all or tried to, request a stop sign or do any of this. The DOT actually makes it pretty easy to do so. You can contact the DOT commissioner online. There's a form and all of this fancy stuff. I learned this from a friend of mine like 20 years ago, shortly after I got my driver's license and started complaining about this stuff. His dad worked for the DOT, and he kind of let me in on the secret that if you make a formal request to the DOT, they have to run a traffic study, which is super cool. Just felt like you don't have to do anything after that, which is frustrating and relevant, but they do have to run a study. So wielding that power was kind of cool. And I remember the first time I tried it out, this intersection again, not too far from where I live now, near my childhood home. Nothing very special about it. I just wanted to always stop there too. It's just another one of those kind of common intersections all around the city where like, you can't really see what's going on and the driver sort of knows their way out. And anybody who's like walking across the intersection, good luck to you if there's a car that's sort of like rolling through the stop sign. But I wrote my little complaint. It was like a long time ago. There wasn't a form. You had to, do it the old-fashioned way. And like 6 months later, I got a letter in the mail, which was really exciting. They denied my request for an all-way stop, but they daylighted the intersection for me, which removed 3 parking spots in the process. So you can see sort of the no standing area on the kind of like left side of the curb. So that's daylighting, right? Like for folks who don't know, just like making it possible. Is removing parking or creating parking restrictions near an intersection, near a corner, so that like, car drivers have a chance to see pedestrians who are about to cross, which is the law in the state of New York. And for reasons I don't understand, like the New York City DOT, like, I don't know, considers itself exempt from that law, that state law, which there are folks like doing a bunch of advocacy around. But anyway, I got this. I was very excited. Didn't get what I wanted. Didn't want to tell all of my parents' friends that I'd taken away their parking spots. But it kind of like got me started on this journey, and I was hooked. I started like, it's just my gateway drug. This is like an example of this is a real screenshot from the 311 app on my phone. There are a lot of requests. I felt very self-conscious about putting the screenshot in here because I learned that like reporting potholes is like a really fun thing to do. You report a pothole and the city will fix it. They'll like you'll show up in like 3 or 4 days and there will be just fresh steaming asphalt on your little pothole. There aren't a lot of things that like where the city, where you like ask for something and it happens. And so this became very addictive for me. And it kind of like sent me kind of down this journey. Anyway, coming back to my intersection now, the one that I'm trying to get my all-way stop on. If you look up my case number there, you will see this. This is what happened. This was the summer of 2021 that I put in this request. Status resolved, resolution denied. Yeah, not great. Yeah, a lot of space at this intersection. Wish we had roundabouts. Me too, yeah. We do finally have some roundabouts, right? They're coming on like Vanderbilt or Underhill. I don't know, it's interesting. So the city is doing some stuff, which is great. But for me, they just denied. That was it. And the DOT doesn't often explain like what their rationale is when they deny one of your requests. This is like from the email that I got, we did a study, we looked at it, we reviewed the data, come back in 3 years is, basically what they said. Which is really frustrating because every time I cross the street in front of my house, I feel unsafe. And so I don't want to wait 3 years. Question, do you have a right to view the study? Well, Isaac, what a great question. This will come up in just a moment. Yeah, the answer is yes. Anyway, it was frustrating. So it's like I got this kind of denial, this rejection. That was it. And I don't know. I don't like being stonewalled like that. I'm a bit of a nudge. Why I chose my, my Orca shirt today. If you can see it, it says, "Be a problem money can't solve." I know you've heard about the orcas destroying the yachts. Anyway, I thought I'd get creative. So I would lie in bed at night and I'd brainstorm different ways to like rephrase my request to like bypass the fact that they had already run a study and just try to get them to run a new one. And I tried as many different things as I could think of. So I tried to ask for what's called a neck down or a curb extension. So these like bulbs that sort of narrow streets at the intersection and give pedestrians like a shorter crossing distance. Resolution denied. I thought I'd ask for a bioswale, otherwise known as a rain garden. We also need this because we have terrible flooding problems on my block. Separate issue. Resolution denied. The DEP actually doesn't let you request a rain garden. I don't know how they decide where they're going to put them in, but I have not found a way to like, I don't know, get anybody to care. Also a really nice, daylighting tool here. I thought I'd ask for a speed bump. Maybe even one of these like ineffectual speed cushions that they've started putting in some places, like around Staten Island. Resolution denied. I think because we're too close to a firehouse or something. A marked pedestrian crosswalk without any traffic control. I thought maybe something. I actually think that's a terrible idea. But I thought, if I could get something, you know, if I get a stake in the ground, then I could work from there. This is another example of that, where like it's a crosswalk but not a stop sign. So the drivers still zoom through and the pedestrians think there's a stop sign. It's awful, but I thought it would be better than nothing. Didn't get it. I asked for a bike lane. Bike lanes do a great job calming traffic, reducing the width of the street, making drivers slow down and think. This one actually wasn't denied. Apparently, it's part of some plan in Community Board 14 to expand like the bike lane network in Ditmas Park, which is great, except like that is like a multi-year process of, you know, stakeholder engagement, and I am very impatient. And this one I was very proud of. I went back to archival Street View imagery and found that at one point 10 years ago, this is from 2012 or 2013, there were street narrowing markings on Dorchester Road. Must have been that like they repaved the street and they didn't restripe it at some point. I thought surely they won't deny me this because it's a precedent and they've done this. And this one actually was approved. They said, yes, we agree. There's a defect, we'll fix it. But again, years at this point, it's been 2 years and I have nothing. I have no paint on the street. I have, you know, just me frustrated. So I tried one more thing before I threw my arms up in frustration. This is coming back to Isaac's question from the chat before about having a right to view the study. I filed a Freedom of Information Law request to get a copy of the study that I had requested that had been done like a couple, you know, years earlier. I guess, how did I phrase it? Yeah, furnish any records related to the most recent DOT traffic control study completed at the intersection of Dorchester Road and Westminster Road in Brooklyn. That's kind of all I had to do. Again, anybody can do this. The grinding wheels of the city, you know, take however long they take, but you can do it. I don't know where I got the idea. There are a lot of lawyers in my family, so we do this stuff. And I was desperate, right? I didn't know what I would do with this. I didn't know, you know, if I got the study, if I got the information, I didn't know what, you know, would matter. I just kind of wanted to like be a pest, and I wanted to like keep folks thinking about this corner that was, you know, was problematic, where every day I saw near accidents and bad stuff happen. And like, I just wanted to understand the rationale behind the denials, because I just got like the word denied and that was it. And I know all the counter arguments to stop signs, right? Like the rationale that they can make drivers more reckless. Some folks apparently speed up to kind of make up for lost time. So there are a lot of claims that like putting too many traffic controls can make the streets more dangerous. Maybe, I don't know. I'm on my corner. It doesn't have anything and it's not working. So I just kind of wanted to understand, was there anything, you know, any explanation? So 6 months later, lo and behold, a 34-page PDF landed in my inbox. My glorious traffic study, my 2021 study, my love, my darling, there she is. It is an inscrutable document, provided like just a dump of information with no context. In this case, I think I have spent a lot of time with this PDF. So I think the sheet on the left is the distance between the existing traffic controls at the intersection, because there are whatever standards that say you shouldn't have them too often or too infrequently. The right is sort of this, you know, kind of crude sketch of just like overall infrastructure, you know, where are the like crosswalks and the trees and, you know, how big are the buildings and what's the visibility and all of that stuff. And just a bunch of data with no context. Spent most of my time figuring out this sheet, which it turns out is this kind of graphic that explains, this is like, a guy came, I guess, in July of 2021 and sat in his car on the corner and just counted how many cars, bikes, and pedestrians, both adult and school children, went past the intersection in a 60-minute period. Two times, I guess, two 60-minute periods, like the morning and evening rush hour of a certain day. So that's what's going on here. And so I, you know, just a lot of reverse engineering. Like at the bottom where it says gaps in 60 minutes, 131. I had no idea, or like no way of knowing how what that meant or how that number was gotten to. There was just nothing, no information. A lot of printed out Excel sheets. I actually found this guy on Instagram, but I haven't reached out to him yet. I don't know, whatever their contractor is. But no access to like the formulas, the rationale that would like help me understand like these numbers. This is pretty small text probably for folks to see, but yeah, what it actually turns out this is the gap analysis, which is in that 60-minute period that they're kind of checking the street, they're checking how many critical gaps for pedestrians to cross between cars exist. There are a bunch of zeros because it turns out that like for my particular intersection, the formula says that a critical gap is 14 seconds or greater. This has to do, I did, like, I had no idea about any of this. And it's just a lot of word vomit, and it's still very confusing to me. But like, basically you're kind of like, what is the width of the crosswalk? And how fast does the average American school child walk in feet per second? And then what is the sort of like, what reaction time in seconds do we want to like tack onto that? And somehow that becomes the magical number of 14 seconds for my corner. Because I had to do like a lot of my own homework and try to find the like I found this template, some New York State guidelines, the MUTCD, which is the Federal Highway, Transit Administration's manual on something. I think I have it in my notes. Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. Yeah, that's sort of like the thing. So just a lot of my own research with resources that are not available, but it all provided kind of a template and some common language to help me convince the city that their data is wrong and that my street needs fixing. This is another sheet. This is another sheet from the study. It's like, okay, warrant criteria. That sounds meaningful. That thing's red. That's red is bad. So I don't know. We probably want red. My street has some red. So why did they not give me a stop sign? A lot of stuff like that. At the bottom, crash experience, accident types. And as you can see, this is the only part I can make heads or tails of at first. Marked one accident in a 36-month period at my corner. But I've seen many accidents on my corner, or I should say crashes. I know there's been more than one. I went to NYC Open Data. I went to the portal. I've used it for a bunch of little like creative projects in the past. I headed there and started mining through it, and I found the police reports. And lo and behold, at least like 7 crashes reported at that intersection. You can see that I live at the corner of Westminster Road, and it's often the cops, I guess, write it as Westminster a lot of the time. Or they might use like, I don't know, GPS coordinates or some like street address. All of the metadata is just garbage. But there were enough crashes to kind of reach the threshold that are in the the standard to get a stop sign. So this inspired me to push further. And I'm gonna take a detour here. I'm gonna pause and just like do the backfill the introduction that I should have started with at the beginning of this talk. I think I got to my name is Josh Park, but nothing after that. So I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm not a computer engineer. I know nothing about anything. I just like to kind of pull the thread and, I don't know, figure stuff out. I spent most of the past decade working as a UX researcher. I was an IT consultant before that. I studied anthropology, again, not computer science. But I do, but just like some stuff about me, I do like exploring like some, weird pockets of the city. I like thinking about infrastructure and like understanding how things work. These things turned out to be hydrants are very long. That's a fun fact that I didn't know. I do a lot of creative coding and prototyping projects in my off time. All of this kind of is relevant. Here, this is an example of a creative coding project that I did back about 10 years ago when I was in a grad program where I was doing a lot of this kind of stuff, like mining NYC Open Data and all of this stuff. This was like a very favorite project of mine. This there had been at the time, this was in 2015, there was a tree census here in New York where you could volunteer to go like count trees. And so I went out and joined the census and I counted trees. And after that, the city released the full database of street trees across the city. So I use the resulting data for this project, which is just a wristband that vibrates when you walk too close to a ginkgo tree. That's all it is. It was just a fun little technical thing, but it was my first sort of like deep dive into open data. More recently, I've spent some time with a lot of tiny text, but I spent some time this year working on some more creative coding projects, doing a lot of like pair programming with ChatGPT and working with a lot of other generative AI models and frameworks and stuff like that. Yeah, a lot of pair programming with GPT-4, a lot of stuff where I'm kind of like mining data in many cases, like my own archival data, building chatbots, building building all sorts of fun tools. But in many cases, like building some of my technical expertise by pair programming with GPT-4 to kind of spackle in the holes where I, a layperson, can, kind of like otherwise get frustrated and put down a project. And really this whole talk could be like reframed as a ChatGPT pair programming talk, because it's really been a godsend for a non-engineer like myself. It's been a fascinating journey, a lot of back and forth. Troubleshooting the process is really interesting, like a miraculous thing, what you can accomplish by getting, ChatGPT to write a Python script for you. It's also a really frustrating miracle because like hallucinations and limited context windows and all of these things that like, it really loses the plot, after when you're like working on something long enough or you've got a script that gets long enough. So a lot of my projects lately, found it very helpful to, somebody's commute is in 5 minutes. Good luck to that person. I found it very helpful to kind of chunk tasks into like simple achievable goals with ChatGPT, like kind of get over some kind of hurdle, build a functional proof of concept, deploy it, and then kind of iterate from there. So that was my big detour to kind of explain some of my background. Coming back to my intersection, I thought I would kind of take that approach and, and try to see what I could do with this inscrutable traffic study to recreate it basically on my own, try to make sense of it and see how well the data matched up with, what I was seeing with my eyes, after seeing that the crash data didn't match at all. So I naively thought it would be simpler and more reliable to like do a kind of car counting thing, do some kind of computer vision project, where it was, where I could like put the camera up by the street and just have it count cars and tell me everything. Everything was so much more complicated than that, which is not too surprising perhaps. But if you're familiar with my project, you can see this is basically where I netted out. So this is like, I think the video that I showed earlier, but annotated with the results of the kind of car counting script that I put together. What's happening in this video, there's sort of these 4 zones, these polygons that are used to detect cars that are passing southbound as well as westbound, cars that are turning right onto the big street, cars that are turning left onto the little street. It's also tracking pedestrians, cyclists, other stuff. And in the corner, you might be able to see it's calculating the number of critical gaps. There's some like, threshold there. So I think it's 60 critical gaps in a 60-minute period is the floor. We do not reach that. That is one of the many ways in which the traffic study that I got was flawed. But this is sort of about as far as I got with this project at the time. So I'll give a little context. Yeah.
What is the critical gaps mean?
Oh, yes. So critical gaps, sorry. So that was the gaps in traffic at the intersection where I want the stop sign installed that would be long enough for a pedestrian to cross the streets. Okay. So it's a critical gap because it's a gap of 14 seconds or more on my corner. That would be different in different places or streets that have different widths, et cetera. But for me, it's calculating, for a car to get from here to there, how many 14-second gaps are there, basically, between cars.
Questions over here.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
And those white polygons, are those supposed to be the crossing sections that if something else intersects it, it throws out the critical gap, and that's been enough of them?
Yeah. So anytime an object is detected that, an object that is detected that crosses or that enters into one of those polygon zones, right? That is added to the tally. So the farthest left one is just like cars that are kind of going westward. The one that's to the right of that is actually cars that are kind of turning southbound, and so forth. Yeah. Yeah. So getting this working real quick. 3 big tools here. So YOLO V8 stands for you only look once. The computer vision model takes an image, right, or a frame of a video, classifies all the objects in it, and has a library of common use cases or types of, classified objects. So in my case, I was able to specify, right, that I want, to distinguish between and only identify cars, trucks, buses, motorcycles, bicycles, and pedestrians. All of the kind of pieces of the puzzle that I care about for my study. So that's object, identification, classification. The second tool is a tool called byte track, which takes an object detected via YOLO, this first tool, and creates what it very adorably calls tracklets. Just like, yeah, it's all good. If I'm
You're fine.
Yeah?
Fine. He's just putting things away.
Oh, okay, cool. Right. Byte track creates these very cute little tracklets, which is like a thing detected via YOLO V8, like a car, for instance. It's just tracking it right frame to frame. So, keeping track of it as it, in my case, as a car heading down the street. And then the third tool is a tool called supervision, which is very new. Basically, it's kind of a Swiss Army knife. It's a little bit of a wrapper around OpenCV, around YOLO V8, around byte track, around these other utilities. And it does some of its other fun stuff. It has its own object counting infrastructure, right? So, so that's where, so supervision is the thing that is kind of counting the cars as they pass into, in this example, I guess it's bonbons that cross a line. In my example, it's cars that like enter a polygon, but that's what supervision does. So all of these three things together, basically, allow me to keep track of identified cars, track them over multiple frames in my video, and then just count them, and do that with like all the different directions of traffic that I care about. I'm not gonna, go line by line through code, but just like at the extremely high level, I guess I kind of just went over this, but basically the script is, is doing exactly that. It's creating the polygons, counting and identifying the cars, creating taking the unique tracker IDs and adding them to a list, and then creating timestamps so that we can calculate those 14-second critical gaps. So that kind of nets out with, with the output that I just showed, and it really doesn't work perfectly. Again, not an engineer. Somebody else could probably do better, and I'm hoping to iterate it further. But the failures are kind of interesting. Occlusions are really confusing for it. I live on a very nice verdant tree-lined street. Each time a car passes a leafy tree, the tracker kind of struggles with it. Struggles to make sure to identify that Ford Econoline van is the same one that's going to show up down here. It has a little bit of trouble because the trees break the plane. So, some stuff like that. Also, I took this video from my bedroom window. It comes at a kind of funny angle, which makes it very hard to identify a car that's going north-south will kind of hit a lot of the same areas as a car that is heading east-west. So again, I learned a lot about having the best source material possible to make its job, easier. Also, I realized in the lower right hand, you can see why I need a catch basin, because just the permanent puddle that lives on that corner. But that's a separate issue. I wound up actually doing a whole manual approach anyway. I thought this would be magical and beautiful and automated. Instead, I used a scorekeeper app, and I sat at my computer and with VLC set to 4x, and I just furiously tapped each time a car, did one of these 4 things so that I could map that onto my study. The data that I got was very accurate, but I really want the stop sign. So I thought I wanted to make it as unimpeachable as possible. Also, their algorithm is really not as good as the human eye at distinguishing between an adult and a school child, which is very important for some of these warrants or criteria that are used to determine whether a stop sign is needed there. There's some other manual stuff. Bought a radar gun to compare my findings, to identify how fast cars are going down the street and compare that to the original study. Turns out speeding isn't actually the biggest problem. It's really just the visibility and lack of pedestrian accommodations. And then to wrap it all up, so I kind of created my study. I had all of my data points, I had my videos, my little annotations, I had everything. And I wrote a letter to the DOT commissioner requesting someone to reconsider my stop sign. And there are many points in which the data that I captured diverged dramatically from the data from the 2021 study. So the volume of vehicles, the number of school children, the number of accidents, the pedestrian gaps, all of that didn't match up. Yeah, question about detecting specific sections of the car instead of cars themselves. Yeah, this is really interesting. And I encourage folks, I'll make sure a link to the blog post is shared and you can kind of go through the video. But there are certain definite failure points within OpenCV and supervision that, yeah, that make it, I'm still kind of fiddling with it and trying to get it to actually like, accurately track and, identify the same car as it's going down the plane. So this is the letter that we sent out. I say we because I didn't actually write it, ChatGPT did. I asked ChatGPT to vehemently insist on the installation of an all-way stop sign. I'm a pretty good writer, but I am also very conflict averse. ChatGPT is not, so I thought it would be useful to just like let it do some of the the hard work. And it did a great job. It got everything. I gave it all my data points, and it did a wonderful job. And right now we're kind of in a waiting period. What is really exciting is that in just 5 days, not even business days, 5 days from dropping that envelope into the mailbox and getting a voicemail from Diana at the DOT saying, "We'd love to talk to you about your study," which is like, it really floored me because, again, this is an agency where it is very hard to get hold of an actual person and hard to get anything beyond like resolution denied. So I will just tell you, I do not have my stop sign yet, but the DOT has agreed to run another study of their own, not in 3 years' time, but now. They even, they very politely asked me when I thought they should come by to take a look at it, which was nice. So I am hopeful. I am. So my partner, I'll tell you that my cat fetches springs at 14 miles an hour. That's what I learned from this project. But while we were all waiting for a stop sign, I just wanted to share like a few quick reflections, like for folks who might want to kind of take this for themselves and try to do something like this. The first is, I can't really prove this, but I suspect you get out what you put in. The DOT form is very easy and very concise, right? But writing a physical letter and mailing it creates like literal and figurative weight. It forces somebody to like rip open an envelope and think. It sits on somebody's desk where they can't really forget it. I've stopped using the form entirely. In most cases, in this case, it was a bigger dossier and I mailed it. But in most cases, if it's like I don't know, if I'm going to complain about something, I might use like a service like Mailform, which can take a PDF and just mail it off in like a very nice, fancy, pretty windowed envelope, looking very official. And I think that matters. Also, patience. Patience is key. This summer, the city installed a traffic light elsewhere in my neighborhood. Yeah, Diana from the DOT will want to hire me or never talk to me again. Not sure. One or the other. But yeah, the DOT installed a traffic light at an intersection also in my neighborhood where I've been complaining for, as you can see, it took about 12 years from the first time that I wrote them. I found this photo from 2011 to the last time when they said, okay, we'll fix it. They did install that this summer. So now every time I'm in my own car sitting at a red light thinking, why did I do this? It's very exciting for me. So yeah, being a squeaky wheel and being patient is key. Next point, there are people who care all around you. I am really guilty of not, doing enough of this stuff, but this is like literally what community boards are for. And, block associations and neighborhood associations tend to be, they're always filled with people who know people or, the city reaches out and speaks to those folks. I've like found neighborhood associations when we lived in the Slope and they were doing a big sewer project. I got on the list so that like the block association would send me weekly updates about my sewer. There are people doing this work and they're out there and it's cool when you find them. And like, I'm here talking to you, which is great, right? Like I wrote this blog post, Isaac found me, I've spoken to folks from Data NYC and Open Plans and like Diana from the DOT and, and there's other DOT folks who found me on LinkedIn. So like, the wheels are moving, which is great. And it makes a difference because, in my corner, I have one corner, but we have a city full of shitty intersections. And then the last point that I thought I just kind of wanted to call out is like, because on the note of people caring all around you, is I think it's worth just like taking a moment to try to make like the thing that is nobody's problem your problem. This is a guy, Paul Goldman was a friend of mine, owned a hardware store in Newkirk Plaza called Allmac that was there for like 100 years. Closed. He died about 10 years ago. It closed a couple of years ago. Newkirk Plaza, if you've been there, is really interesting. It's like this open air plaza over the BQ train, and it's this like bureaucratic, vacuum. It's not quite DOT property. It's not quite MTA property. Nobody wants it. They can't figure it out, and so it's kind of ignored, and it's kind of left to ruin or left to like local folks to to kind of take ownership of it. So Paul, would always like take the time. He was the guy who would donate like the cans of paint and the light bulbs, and he would like, he would put in the hours. So I just like be the Paul Goldman you want to see in the world is sort of, but like if there's one thing that I say, I try, do the little bits that I can by writing hundreds of annoying letters or having AIs do it. Anyway, that's all I had really. Now I'm off to fight my next battle, getting the city to replace a goddamn light bulb. So this is also around the corner from my house, this street light. Since we've lived there for 2 years, has been burned out. The city said it was Con Edison's problem. I was just like back and forth with Con Ed on Twitter for months. I had to learn about like DOT stop tags and work orders, and like it's just been a whole thing. Anyway, so at least I've got something to keep me busy while being, while waiting for my stop sign. All right, that's what I got for you. Thanks for listening. Keep in touch. I will let you all know, when not if I get my little stop sign. But yeah, that's it for me. And yeah, thank you all. Love this. Yeah. You're looking for a project. My HOA has been fighting for a stop sign. Oh God, after a death. Yeah. Yeah, it's awful. Definitely not just a me problem. I've talked to folks at, again, Open Plans about like trying to take some of what I've learned about this traffic study process and demystify it further and try to take the, the spaghetti code that I put together and try to make that something that's replicable. So that's definitely an ongoing project. But my hope is that it gets to a point where folks anywhere in the country can use that to gather the data they need to convince people to do stuff. Yeah, any questions? Yeah.
Is there a way to see where other folks put in a service request, like for the place you did it? Do you know if other people also had issues with it, or how to be a tool that'd be helpful?
Yeah, I sure do. Gosh, I wonder where I put that screenshot. Let's see. I probably can't get that up in time, but yeah, basically on the same DOT site where you can like fill out that form, when you can like fill out this form, you can go through the drop downs and say you want them to install a traffic sign and whatever. And there's a little box that pops up that's like, put in your address, and you can see like that map, and you can see all of the service requests for the area. And so there's a little histogram or whatever for my block, and there's like however many requests that are probably all the ones that I've created on the heat map in front of my house. And then there's like 10 times as many for a very bad intersection that's like a block away. Portelia Road and Coney Island Avenue, for any folks who happen to live in that area. Really messed up.
It's really bad.
It's awful. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, it's just one of those like jagged kind of things where, anyway, it's awful. The geometry of that street is terrible. And yeah, and so if you go, you'll see that there's like 70 service requests. Anyway, yeah, so yes, you can take a look and you can see all of the different, information, all the different requests that have been denied from your neighbors, but you can't get a lot more detail than that. At least not without, the FOIA request. Yeah.
Have you been able to automate the Napier through ongoing requests?
I'm so glad you asked that. I have not yet, but I have this dream that I'm going to share with you. I have wanted for years to do like a Raspberry Pi kind of thing with like an accelerometer where if I'm driving, like and I hit a pothole, it just like tracks the lat long, and then I can like have it just convert that to a letter and mail it off. Absolutely no reason why not. Probably gonna be the thing I do next after this project. So, I don't know, follow all the socials, but I haven't done much more than that yet. Plenty of APIs and ways to automate being annoying. And I will take advantage of all of them. Open sourcing these projects. Yeah, I mean, on my blog, there's links to GitHub. Everything, every piece of code is is there. This again is kind of spaghetti code. It's very much a work in progress, but it's all there, and you can check it out. Yeah, all open. Yeah.
I was just wondering, what do you think is the difference between the pothole requests that you're putting in that get dealt with really quickly, which seems like it'd be like way more work to do, versus a traffic study getting ignored for 10 years before they even respond to your request?
I suspect, and I'm just, again, speaking just as a civilian, I suspect it comes down to like different just bureaucracy, right? Like different little subdivisions of the Department of Transportation that work in different ways. For potholes, like one thing that's interesting, if you've seen like situations where you drive around or you're taking the bus or something and the streets, like before they pave them, they mill them, right? Where there's like, they're kind of rutted for a long time. The reason that they sort of sit in that like half-finished condition for weeks on end is because there are like separate parts of the DOT that do the milling operation and separate parts that schedule the paving operation. So again, not quite my world, but it's like, I suspect it's just that like bureaucratic piece on the back end. Great question, non-traffic question. As a non-coder, how did you get started with prompt engineering so that you got ChatGPT to output working code? That is a wonderful question, yeah. So, I have, as I was saying, like some technical background. I've shipped code for years, but it's been like very much a moonlight, occasional non-coder thing. So I'm starting not from zero. I do think that ChatGPT is the perfect tool if you are starting from zero, because I think in the screenshot that I showed, I asked a question. I was like, this is what I want in very plain text. And I got a Python script in my first reply, something that I could, immediately deploy. Did it work? No. Was it useful? No. But it was like a functional thing. And ChatGPT is so good at this call and response, right? Where you can iterate and you can like take this, process. And if there's something you don't understand, you can ask that follow-up question. You can ask for instructions on where to deploy.
Hey, Mom. I
Whatever.
finished shopping a while ago, but I don't know what to do with these things. So just flagging.
Somebody's got a hot mic. Don't know who it is. How old are these traffic standards? Oh yeah, ChatGPT 4. Yes. Somebody said something about the high price of paying for ChatGPT Pro, which is like whatever it is a month. I feel like you get that for free through Bing, possibly. I'm not totally sure. Yeah, there are definitely like issues, with accessibility, but it is like very much worth trying to get your way to GPT-4 over GPT 3.5, especially if you're doing anything code related. Paid for on school kids instead. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, in the end, if I just stood out in the corner for an hour, I could have gathered the data that I needed. But trying to ultimately like work to something that scales a little bit, because there are so many streets in my neighborhood that I would love to complain about. Somebody asked a question about how old these traffic standards are. Seems ridiculous. Most people give up. Yeah, most people give up. I don't know how old they are. I do know that like it is such a thicket, right? Because there is, so like there are the federal standards that sort of trickle down to the state, and the state decides like what it's going to do and what it's going to tweak, and they trickle down to the city. And the city decides like what it's going to kind of take and what it's going to kind of customize. And I have had this, something else I didn't quite put in here, but there are a couple of like places on like highways around the city where there are lanes that are not striped, that I really want them to like fix the, the striping on the lane markers on the highway, so you don't like crash into the car next to you. And I've looked it up, and like the state has these like maintenance districts where the state controls certain like chunks of city highways and the city controls other chunks. Anyway, I could keep rambling, but yeah, I don't know why it is the way that it is. That's a Paul Buttigieg problem. Pete, sorry, you guys can bug him. Question here, trying to get the city to address a visibility problem, huge bush that blocks any ability to see oncoming traffic. Yeah, my God. It's a question from Birmingham, Alabama. And yeah, I know who this person is. I've been to this person's house in Birmingham, Alabama, and I've also requested potholes to be repaired there. It just takes a little bit longer, but it can be done. There's a great link here, which I hope we'll share around. Somebody says DOT is playing around with its own AI pedestrian / cyclist / motorist counters. Absolutely the first I've heard of this. That's so cool. Hopefully that makes this entire presentation useless, and I'm very excited to follow that link, but I know nothing about it. Traffic studies are political, somebody mentions. Yeah, automated measurement actually helps force action because they'll avoid / defer doing a study if they don't want to. That's very true if folks have followed what's happened with the bike lanes, like in Fort Greene or the McGinnis Boulevard stuff. Like that kind of activism cuts both ways. Like we've had administrations that have been very proactive with this stuff, and the current administration that maybe is a little bit less proactive. Yeah, the politics can be really extreme. So another case for having like having the data and using the tools available to get the job done. Yeah.
Do you ever see DOT developing these types of tools in-house?
I would love to see that, but if you go to the DOT, right, like you saw the screenshots, they're all like, the nice like early 2000s UI. It's pretty convoluted. It's been a long time since I've seen anything. Like I feel like the 311 app is maybe the last good example I saw of just like a very, easy to use, low barrier to entry tool that anybody can kind of participate in. I very much hope that the DOT, and I know that the DOT, there is NYC Open Data. I was just talking to somebody about how the MTA is kind of opening up their own open data team, or that's just spun up very recently. So I'm hopeful, and hopefully the conversation, kind of inspires that type of action, but I don't know. Some other fun notes here about tracking computer vision detection for NYC DOT. Oh, Numina.co. Okay, we'll pull all these links together for folks for sure. Yeah, Mike Czar at NYC DOT. Any other questions? Yeah.
So when roads are being restriped, there's a common issue where like cars will encroach into the crosswalk and make that into like parking space, and then
Right.
it never gets repainted.
That drives me
Do you know
nuts
any,
too.
like solutions to that?
I've like walked past, the people with those amazing machines that do the like plastic paint, like shiny paint for the lane striping, and I've like thought, I give them $50, will they just like put my crosswalk in, like, and I'll look the other way? I don't know, and I have like not had any success. There are a couple of cases of that I'm aware of where, yeah, again in my neighborhood where like there happened to be a double parked car on that day, and so the crosswalk is only half finished, and they never came back to finish it. Maddening, but I don't have any answers. Anyone else? Yeah.
Are you, when they do the new traffic study, are they gonna tell you exactly when it is? And are you gonna be standing at the window with your radar gun?
So I don't think they'll tell me. I was gonna email and ask exactly that question. I was like, just let me know when your people come by. I just want to say hi. Just want to say hi, friendly. But I haven't done that yet. In the past, though, I have seen like them do the traffic studies. I haven't like happened to have run into these people, and I've seen them when they put down the kind of pneumatic tube, like speed detector thing that they sometimes tape down on the road. And I thought, well, maybe if I like just drive over it back and forth a bunch, like, can I just skew the data? I suspect it's not that hard to skew the data because I think they've like paved streets where I've complained about too many potholes, but I don't know. The street, yeah, question, reason why the street narrowing paint was not put back. So no, I was told that, yes, it's great, they'll put it back. Radio silence, I wrote back 6 months later or something and said nothing has happened, didn't get a response. It's been another 6 months or a year since then. So even when I get, some like positive outcome, it still requires like a lot of back and forth. I suspect maybe it's because they are beginning this process of planning a bike lane, so maybe they don't want to put striping down that they'll have to then deal with. But I'm also like skeptical that the DOT is like efficient enough to kind of be aware of what the other sub parts of the org are doing. So I don't know.
So thank you, Josh, for the really nice presentation. I wonder, like, kind of the crux of your presentation is that this study for DOT was not valid, which brings to the question is what fraction of the DOT studies are actually not valid? And I wonder if there can be a larger, more organized movement to do some sort of peer review or third-party review of a certain fraction of all the DOT studies to see what part are no longer representative of the way streets are in New York City.
I mean, that is the question. That's so key. I think in general, I don't know why they told me 3 years. In general, I think it's every 12 months that they will like reset the clock and they will come out and do another study if somebody else complains. I guess maybe they knew it was me and they decided it would be 3 years. But yeah, so I think there are kind of some checks and balances like that. Like they don't generally ignore you forever. Yeah, but it doesn't really solve the point, I think, of what you're saying, which is like if a traffic engineer comes out and is like scrolling on TikTok and like, you know, kind of half keeping an eye on whatever they're supposed to do, which I don't know if that's what happens, but I know that like, it's probably very hard to do that job. There's a lot of different data points to keep track of, and it was very hard for me to kind of like juggle all of those balls. Yeah, I imagine that it's probably a great percentage of the traffic studies that, you know, that don't quite work out. And so my hope is that like using some of these tools, we could simply, you know, shine a little bit more light on problematic intersections and like, you know, get access to those studies and, you know, hopefully automate some of this so that we can make that a little bit easier for folks to challenge that information. What contact channel have you found to be most effective? Snail mail or Twitter? Yeah, Twitter worked great for Con Ed. Not very useful for the DOT. Snail mail, I believe, works best for the DOT. Now that I have Diana's number, she will regret that she's given me that. Yeah. Yeah, so that's, I suspect good old fashioned snail mail. Yeah.
I just had a follow-up to the question around studying how many of the traffic studies are off. You said that it was like a contractor, right? It wasn't like a DOT employee that came and did the person that you found.
Yeah, I think that they subcontracted out based on my, you know, Googling of the name that was on the top of that slide, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the inner workings of that look like.
Yeah, I have a little bit of experience with like the Baltimore DOT. I know that none of that was done by like actual DOT employees.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's all contract.
Yeah.
In other cities, but I don't know about here.
Yeah, I would love to know more about that, but yeah, it's a bit of a black box for me. Nonprofit city council, whoever, talking about streamlining these processes. I don't know the answer to that. I do know that I've like, as part of this project and, you know, some of the conversations I've had, again, I've spoken to folks at Open Plans who work on daylighting and have talked a lot about like, you know, that is kind of what they do. And we've talked about, you know, ways to kind of implement some of these learnings into some of their materials. So those conversations are ongoing, and I'm hoping by coming out and talking to you folks, like we can, you know, we can get the ball rolling on that, but I don't know exactly beyond that. Did you have a thought?
You know, I'm just wondering, you know, after going through this, it seems like one takeaway might be that the barrier to approving a new stop sign is too high.
Perhaps slightly too high. Maybe.
What it would even take to get those standards lowered, maybe make that 50-page study a 2-page study. Who would have to okay that?
Yeah, yeah. I wonder, what I don't know is whether like the, you know, the traffic control Bible that again is like penned by the federal government, the state uses and the city uses, is that like, because that is the Bible and that's the tool that traffic engineers use, or is there like, does that have to do with like highway funds and we have to use that in its exact form? That is a question that I'm very curious to know the answer, but disappointingly, again, I know nothing.
In the open data, were you able to identify the approval rate for these DOT requests?
Oh, what a great question. I haven't tried that. That is a wonderful question. I bet you can, but I haven't done that. What's the hypothesis there? If you have one.
I don't know, like, are the standards like way too high? Does nothing ever get approved?
Yeah, yeah. I suspect yes. Right. I don't know, but I would love to pull the thread on that for sure. Study/ongoing conversation with DOT TPM or traffic ops. That is a detail. That sounds like you know more than I do about DOT infrastructure. If you would like to share more about DOT TPM and traffic ops, that sounds like a thing I would like to know, but do not know.
Let's imagine an alternate world where you were a traffic engineer.
Yeah.
Boom, you've gotten the job at the DOT. Now that you're, you know, now that you're behind enemy lines.
I'm like, everybody wants a goddamn stop sign. Shut up.
Yeah, what would you do then? What would your magic wand thing be?
Oh man. Yeah. I think in general, I think we do a lot of studying and then studying the studies and then studying the studies about the studies. And then we have to reschedule them. And then we have to do community board meetings and then, you know, stakeholder interviews and all of that is great. But sometimes, right, like we've learned in the city, you just need a coat of paint, right? Or you need a traffic cone, or you need to kind of prove or, you know, prototype something on the ground to see that like there is change possible. And we've also seen, right, that the city can act really fast after somebody dies, right? Like what happened in Gowanus on 9th Street and 2nd Avenue when they like somebody died and they solved a problem that has been there for years of that like choke point on the bike lanes on 9th Street. So it is possible. So anyway, to answer your question, what would I do? I would invest in the cheap shit, just the fucking paint, just like get, you know, get some paint, and I think that's what like former DOT commissioners have done, right? It's just like try to put some stuff out in the universe, do stuff that you can roll back very quickly if it doesn't work, but like actually do stuff and just see how it works in real world conditions. And that's where my energy would be focused, I think, instead of like starting from the default presumption of no, we will do nothing. And you have to, you know, do crazy stuff to convince us that we should study whether we should do nothing. But easier said than done.
On that point, do you think it'll become easier as like, instead of getting a contractor to come out and sit at the stop sign for 3 days of a week, you can just set up a webcam and like democratize the study basically to the residents?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I posted this on LinkedIn. Somebody shared some project for some like startup hardware, you know, something that like cities can find, you know, strap a thing to a light post and like get that data in a very kind of, it's closed source and it's like, you know, I don't know much more about it, but yeah, that or kind of getting this to a place where somebody could like have an hour of video and like click a button and get the data back. I mean, I think we're kind of at this amazing moment where like with those, like getting from where we are now to, you know, to getting that kind of replicable and working very functionally isn't that big of a leap. And, you know, even using tools like ChatGPT to do some of your annoying letter writing for you, all of these tools are available to us now in ways they've never been before. So yeah, I really am very optimistic that, you know, the process will be a lot more streamlined. It's really just up to the powers that be to like invest in change when they are, I think, sometimes more incentivized to invest in the status quo. Does NYS throttle camera enforcement or stop signs? I don't know what that means. Do you want to clarify that? I didn't quite catch what that meant.
Sorry, I mean, so it was just recently that New York State quit throttling camera enforcement for speeding. I was just wondering if you knew off the top of your head if there was a similar New York State throttling of camera or automated enforcement of stop sign violations.
Oh, the thing where, yeah, where New York State controls how many enforcement cameras we have, and we were finally allowed to have, you know, more speed enforcement cameras than whatever the limit was, which is like 10 cameras only during like school hours and weekdays. And then city finally got control over that. Yeah, I don't think there are any, I don't know that there's any automated enforcement for stop signs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that all of that is, you know, red light cameras. I do know there was some news recently, right, that like the city has opened up, we're working with the MTA to kind of expand what the bus enforcement cameras are capable of. So like, not just maybe like bus lane tickets. I don't know, there's something else that they're doing more, which is really exciting because that's like, again, free tool thing that we have. So great that we can like democratize that or open that up. But right, oftentimes it's like, the government or MTA employees that are in the bike lanes. So yeah, there's a push and pull there that's challenging. Hayden.ai, bus lane enforcement. Cool. Yeah. I've got a lot of homework after this, which I'm very excited about. I am thrilled about this. Yeah.
What are some good ways for folks to get involved?
Yeah. Well, so I know, for instance, in my neighborhood, again, I'm very guilty of this because I'm not social enough to do some of this stuff. But in my neighborhood, you know, I've looked up, there are, you know, advocacy groups like, I think it's Flatbush Streets for People, right? That like, you know, that have their monthly meetings. The community boards have their meetings and they have their transit subcommittees. All of this exists. The infrastructure exists. The people are out there. I have, you know, I certainly don't know of any like centralized way to find those folks, but you know, again, in Ditmas, I'm like Flatbush Development Corporation or the Business Improvement District. There's like find the first person, ask them who to talk to, and like, I think that it's very easy to kind of, begin to get the ball rolling that way. That's what I would suspect, but it definitely requires like some, proactive kind of figuring out, because I don't think that there are very many centralized resources to make this process easier for folks. Somebody says, email Brooklyn@transalt.org to get involved in BK Safe Streets advocacy. Okay, that is a very direct, actionable plug. Brooklyn@transalt.org to get involved. And we mainly talk, Isaac says, we mainly talk in the Transit Techies Slack channel, the Beta NYC Slack. That's also a great plug, Beta NYC. Yeah.
Open Data Week.
At Open Data Week, right, coming up in March, yeah. Exciting. Cool. Well, you call it. Any questions? Any last minute anything?
Is there anything from this journey that you went on that got you like super excited, or anything that happened and you're like, oh, that's awesome?
I was very excited just to see that like the state of the art was such that I could get to a like very, very functional like car counting and object detection algorithm, and I could like do that again as a person who like has whatever skills I have, but that is not my day job. So I was very excited about that. And then more than anything, I was excited by the reaction and the response to some of this. So the conversation, so people have reached out to me, Isaac reached out to me to talk. People have reached out from Beta NYC and are like, oh, well, you should give this talk at, at Open Data Week, or here's this person you should talk to from the DOT who works on, or somebody who works on NYC Open Data. They're very responsive to requests for improving, the metadata. So again, the fact of like, when you start those conversations, there are a lot of excited people who are very enthusiastic about connecting, people who are squeaky wheels to other people who are squeaky wheels. That is by far the thing that has been most exciting to me. I think we'll leave it at that. This has been wonderful. Thank you all for having me, and stay in touch.
Thank you for coming and doing this work.
Thanks, Isaac. Thanks, Isaac.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for
Yeah,
doing
sorry I couldn't be there. I
remote
wish I could see
headless
faces. Yeah. Let me stop the recording.